Welcome to A Bit of Insight with Lisa Mosbey, your weekly dose of health, wealth, and everything else. Tune in for real talk, wise words, and soulful strategies for thriving in life and business. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. When was the last time you had a conversation about emotional intelligence? You know, that's not something people ask me very often, but today we're going to learn how to triumph and soar. And we're going to be talking about that emotional intelligence. How does that play into life? But first, let me introduce my guest to A Bit of Insight with Lisa Mosbey. That's me. Debbie Martinez is the executive director and founder of the SOAR Foundation Group. Recognizing the immense struggles that teenagers face, Debbie is on a mission to provide a safe and empowering space for adolescents to build self-confidence, find their voice, and embrace their authentic selves. With over 25 years of experience in the entertainment industry as a producer and a performing art educator, her program focuses on nurturing well-rounded and emotionally intelligent young individuals who go on to make a positive impact in the world. Debbie utilizes SOAR workshops as a vehicle to instill courage and purpose in adolescents as they embark on their unique paths. Connecting with teens is not just a profession for Debbie, it is her true passion and life's work, and she's here to tell us about it. Thank you so much, Debbie, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I joke about that. How often do we talk about emotional intelligence? It's probably part of your everyday life, but do you find yourself having to explain what is emotional intelligence? And can you share that definition with me and the audience today?
Sure. The way that I approach emotional intelligence, honestly, is from a standpoint, it's very simple. It's really finding life tools that support us in navigating this very complicated world that we live in. And we have all these compartments, right? In our world, we have our friends, our family, our work associates, our schoolmates, because I deal a lot with teens and adolescents and everything. And so having tools that allow us to navigate that world is the way that I describe emotional intelligence. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I think the piece that I add in there is to not be afraid. You know, we're human beings and we have emotions. And it's okay to share those emotions, preferably in a safe space so that you don't have kickback or feedback or a negative experience. And so when you shared that description of how you create those safe spaces for teens, that really resonated with me, that it's a place for them to actually feel the feels, feel the emotions, be able to work through trauma, joy, happiness, grieving, sorrow, whatever those emotions are, but it's a safe place and there's no judgment. And so I think that that's really important that people realize that it's available. And we want our kids to be able to experience that, whether that's through your program or at home. So do you want to share a little bit about your journey of resiliency and how you found strength to move forward after some childhood trauma?
Absolutely. I for as long as I can remember, it's been important to me to create safe space, and I do understand and recognize that where that came from was the fact that I am a sexual abuse survivor between the ages of 7 and 13 years old by 4 different men. And, those experiences impact people in lots of different ways. Um, for me, the way it impacted me was that I got to uh, create space where children felt like they were safe to tell and to talk and to share anything that was going on in their life. I did not feel like I had that space as a child. And my life journey has been an evolution of finding ways to do that. And I feel like that really started to blossom when I had the opportunity to create a theater arts, performing arts education program in Palos Verdes, California. And I used that space not to create child stars, but to create great human beings that were going to impact the world in a positive way. And in that space, they felt like they owned their voices, that they were in a judgment-free environment where they could soar, where they could succeed or fail with no judgment at all. And so I know that even from that space, I have a living legacy of 15 years of working with children in that space. And then as I moved forward, COVID happened, theater died, and we didn't know if it was ever coming back or not. And for a hot second, I thought, maybe I'll retire. Maybe I'm done. And after that hot second, I realized that was not a good look on me. And so I didn't want to just take up space in the world. I didn't want to do something as a hobby. And so I thought, what can I do to create, to be in service to other people and be in service to this world. And since children is what I had made my life's work about, I decided to take all my theater experience where I had created that space and those tools for children to use in their life, and all the emotional intelligence work that I'd done on myself and 1,000 years of therapy in addition to that, and put those two worlds together. And so SOAR was born from mashing those two worlds of being able to have fun with theater exercises and that sort of thing that takes us out of our head and puts us in our body and our hearts. And also being able to create space where there could be peer discussion, where anything that was coming up for kids, they could share. And so SOAR was born honestly from the COVID experience and from me deciding what was next in my life, in a reinvention of who I was going to be moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, marrying that trauma and resiliency with what's possible. What can we create with this? We need to tell folks what SOAR stands for. We just talked about it at the beginning of the show because you were telling me before we started. Self-confidence, I know that one. What are the rest of the acronyms?
Originality, authenticity, and responsibility.
And
Um,
why did you choose those?
Even as I chose those, first of all, they fit the acronym that I wanted to to move forward with, but they were four of the context words that I wanted to land in these workshops. And and I feel like they're also four of the hardest things for any of us, even as adults, to
Mhm.
own. Self-confidence. How many of us as adults still struggle with that, right?
Yeah.
Um, Originality. Um, we all want to fit in, kind of disappear into the crowd, right? Don't be different, don't stand out. But what makes us special is the things that are original about ourselves. And so
Yeah.
being proud of that, owning your own originality, authenticity, we're all afraid of being judged. If we're authentic, if we're our most authentic self, what what if people don't like that part of us? What if people don't like who that is? When it's so much easier, once again, just to fit in, mold ourselves into whatever seems to be acceptable at the moment. And so owning our authentic selves, feeling safe to do that and use it as a leadership quality and being our most authentic self. And then being in responsibility, knowing that we are respond our trajectory as far as our life is concerned. And in owning the responsibility for our own lives, um, we also become leaders in that because we're not pretending that it's someone else's fault, that something's happened to us, that life is happening to us. In owning our actions and owning what we want in our life, being responsible for those things, we become the leaders that we want to see in the world today. And so those are the reasons that I chose those words.
Yeah. And I can see how, when you said adults, adults, we would think that adults would already have connection to those that, we've gone through high school, we've gone through our 20s and 30s, many of us. And, do we still have self-confidence? And I meet so many people like doing the work that I do, working with women who want to step out and maybe own their own business and create their own residual income, still don't have the confidence to do it. They may have had a big corporate career, but they don't necessarily have the confidence to own their own business, to step into that field. And then, when they do, they put on these masks, like the mask that they wore when they were a mom, or the mask that they wore when they were working in corporate America, or the mask that they want to hide behind so that nobody sees their authentic, original, real self. And so I think it starts not just, it's not just kids that have to go through all of these things. I think there were no tools for many of us who are adults living with some of this right now. So starting at such a young age, offering it to teenagers who struggle the most with body changes and peer pressure and all the things that are going on, we could change society with teaching these behaviors that you're talking about, this creating that safe space and teaching them how to create safe spaces with their kids or their peers or the students that they work with. So what you're doing is amazing. What challenges did you face in building something like this to scale? Like, I know you're still in the midst of it. You're still working on grants. And if anybody out
Yep.
there is looking for something to invest in or looking for a place to funnel money that would serve the community, I would certainly want to make that connection with you and Debbie so that her contact information will be in the notes as well. But what kind of challenges, like I'm sure you've thought through this, you've done this before, you've run a theater company before. What are you looking into the future to make this happen and come to the vision, like be the vision that you see in your mind?
Well, we're constantly evolving. When I first started creating the model and the concept, I spoke to a lot of mental health professionals, education professionals. I interviewed parents, I interviewed children, and just to find out where the landscape was at the time. And so the model was created from those conversations. As far as, right now we're doing workshops in California. We've been in Oregon. We're going to Sarasota, Florida, in April, South Carolina. I'm based here in Columbus, Ohio, so we definitely do work here in Columbus, Ohio. The vision is to get this into as many places, states, organizations, standalones as possible. And so what's happening is that word of mouth, because now we've been around, we're going into our fourth year, we've been around for a hot second. And so word of mouth is definitely taking off. People, the phone is ringing because people are starting to understand the value of having these programs. One of the things that I found when I was talking to mental health professionals and doing the market research for starting SOAR is that there's a tremendous amount of information about what's wrong out there, the problems that exist, the trauma that happened during COVID for children as far as depression, stress, anxiety, isolation, suicide ideation, and that list goes on.
It's a lot.
But right, right. It was not pretty at all. Those things continue, I still get phone calls from people who have children that has had a, a friend commit suicide, or um, you know, there's bullying and all of the things that that kids are dealing with day to day and everything. Um, but I feel like this has been such a journey as far as finding a way, like you said, to explain what emotional intelligence is. And I think the best way that I've found to explain it is to have people actually go through the program. And I've had a lot of people come and ask to volunteer and support the program as far as adults are concerned. And as they're coming in and I'm doing sample programs for them, having them experience what the children experience inside of a workshop, they're starting to talk, they're getting it now. They're
Yeah.
starting to talk about, you know, why this is important for children. And so it's really been a word of mouth, an experiential experience, and based on results. I'm going back for the fourth year to a ballet studio in San Pedro, California. Why do they continue to bring me back? It's because they continue to see results. They continue to see growth in these young women that are in a really competitive, mean girl sort of environment, that this work has completely changed the complexion of what their school looks like, and because they're learning to create community as well. Um, I don't know if you've had this experience since COVID and during COVID, but we all lost a lot of communication skills during that time because of isolation and everything. And even before that, it's very scary sometimes for us to make new friends, to create a community of people that we feel safe in, where we can thrive and be who we're going to be. Um, that became much more exponentially more difficult during COVID.
Yeah, I think
And
it's different people's
did you find
different
that?
experiences. Well, it was a little different for me because a wellness company had reached out to me and they didn't have coaches who could do Zoom, and I had already been on Zoom with one-to-one coaching and things. So I was asked to facilitate wellness workshops. So I was doing 14 workshops a week on Zoom, talking about health and wellness and what we should be eating and the habits we should be having and what we're drinking and how we can move our body during that period. And then that actually continued. I no longer work for the company because they went back into physical, they wanted people to be physical, and I was not in the same state that they were in. So, but I had a group of people that wanted to stay with me digitally. And so still to this day on Saturday mornings, I do a volunteer wellness workshop. It's all run on donations. Anybody can come. We talk about all kinds of things: health, wealth, vitamins, supplements, nutrition, fitness, weight management, all of those things. Everything is open and for discussion. And we've just continued. But you're right. There are some folks there that have not gone back to the in-person location. They enjoy being on virtual. I think that this week. I think this week was finally the last person that had not gone back to a live workshop is going either this week or there may be one more. I'm not sure, but I had one or two people who were still holdouts who still hadn't done that. They found virtual worked for them. But one of the gals, she went back this week and she said they recognized me. They hadn't seen me since before COVID. So we're talking 4 years now. She hadn't been there, and still a lot of the same people had come back and they were there and they welcomed her with open arms and they were hugging her. And she just, when she was telling me the story, she just lit up because she didn't realize what she was missing. Like, we were filling a part of it,
Yeah.
but that was a really long way to get to my point. I'm sorry about that, but it just, like, the vision of her and how she explained this experience kind of gave me chicken skin, like I had goosebumps all over my body because I
Yeah.
realized that she's not the only one. There's still many, many, many people in the world that are traumatized by the experience they had with COVID.
And just
Kids,
think about,
most importantly.
as children, how many transitions were missed. Transitions that are so important in their social development, their emotional development. Um, a lot of those things were missed. And so being able to reach out, make new friends, how do I start a conversation? What does active listening look like? How do I feel safe in environments, where I'm uncomfortable, and people are staring at me and when I'm talking. Um, so yeah, so there was so much information out there about, what was wrong, but not a lot of programming. Almost no programming actually. And the wait to get in to see therapists for children during that time and even until now were so long that support just didn't exist for
Yeah.
children outside of whatever they were getting at home. Um, so SOAR is filling a need that people didn't even know they needed or existed until they actually experience it. And once they experience, they're like, there it is,
Yeah.
because of the shift in what happens with these children in just 2 days, you
So
know.
how does the theater help teens develop the emotional intelligence and self-confidence? Like, is there a way for you to describe it without us feeling it so that we can give people kind of an idea of what you're
Sure.
observing even?
It creates the fun in the weekend. And so the weekends are an ebb and flow. They're an ebb and flow of an emotional roller coaster, a bit of. And so with the theater exercises, it still lands context as far as like an improv game that is all about listening to the other person and what are they saying and how is it landing and what does the emotion and their body language look like during that improv and how that exercise transpires between two children lands context for how they show up in the world and how they recognize emotional shifts in people and body language and that sort of thing. And so when we have these deep emotional converse peer discussions and deep dives emotionally for vulnerability, those are some really very emotional experiences where kids do feel they feel safe enough to talk about things that are really coming up for them in their lives. But those exercises are followed by lightening things up in with theater context, and everything, so that the exercise is this beautiful ebb and flow of um, still landing things constantly, but the way that it's done allows children to have emotional relief in the way they're receiving everything. Does that make sense, what I just said?
Does, can you could you share a success story of a teen who's been transformed by the experience? Like, was there one that stands out in your mind as I ask that question?
Yeah. I think I can, this ballet studio that I was just speaking to you of, I
Yeah.
think using that group of young women as as an example is the most perfect thing that I could probably share with you. This this studio owner brought me in because it was just following COVID. They had been practicing ballet outside. This was her elite company. And so they were just going back into the room. And she was right on the verge of trying to decide if she was going to give up her business that had been here for 25 years, 30 years in the San Pedro area, or if she was going to continue. And the reason she was in that dilemma is because there was so much um, anger and meanness going on between the children. They were coming out of COVID, having a lot of problems communicating with each other. Even though they were dancing together 5 to 6 days a week, they weren't, they didn't know who each other were. They weren't really friends. They knew each other, but didn't know each other. And so as we have been in there over the last 3 years, this studio owner who actually she does an interview on it's on my website. This is from San Pedro Ballet in LA, and she credits SOAR for saving her business because it transformed the relationships that these children have with each other, not only with each other, but also with the resident artists that are teaching them the way that they navigate conflict resolution, the way that they navigate supporting each other, the way that they learn to ask questions of each other and not just exist in the same space, but they're curious about each other. They've created space and time outside of the studio to bond, have activities that they use to bond. And so they have truly become a community as opposed to a dance class or a dance
Yeah.
company. They're a real community that support each other, love each other, embrace, they notice when someone isn't okay. They notice and they surround them and they love them and they take care of each other. And it's actually a really beautiful interview, for anybody that takes the time to take a look at that and everything. But it transformed not only her business, but every single child that has participated. And you would think that because we're talking about 11 to 17-year olds, that once they've done I have these children from for about 17 to 18 hours during that weekend. And
Okay.
you would think, so they don't do anything else during that weekend. No birthday parties, no sleep. They're not doing anything else that they would not want to continue to give up that weekend every time I go in, and they can't wait for us to get there because they learn something new about themselves every time we're in the room. And I think that that is also really a beautiful experience for all of us, is that we're watching them discover themselves. We're watching them discover each other and how they can use all of these skills, not only in that studio, but in their lives with their families, with their friends at school, and so you got me started.
Well, it was a perfect example. It really was. And, what I was envisioning was I've done quite a few women's retreats. Like I've facilitated them. I have been a participant in them. And I think of those experiences, and many of them are 2 and 3 days, usually come in on a Friday and you leave on a Sunday. And
Yeah.
it's profound how closely you connect. And there are many women who are in my phone that I have never seen again, that I met at a retreat in some city or state somewhere. And, that was the only time in our life that we were together, but yet we still have this bond. So I totally get what you're saying. I could feel it in my own cells, what you're explaining. And that the fact that you can create that for kids, for teens, is amazing, because it gives them a leg up when you can. How many of us are still going through therapy in our 40s and 50s and trying to do that internal work to figure out why we have limiting beliefs and why we have all of this trauma in our life that we haven't processed? When you give kids the skills to do this as teenagers, their life changes forever. They don't ever have to go back to that. And that's what just so mind-boggling to me. I was never a parent, so maybe it's not as extraordinary as I see it to be.
Oh, no,
But
it is.
it
It's
is okay.
it's absolutely as extraordinary as you
Yes.
see it.
It is amazing what you're doing. So I know we're actually recording this on my mom's first heavenly birthday, and it's the day before your birthday. You got a big number coming up here.
I
What
do.
does legacy mean to you? How do you hope SOAR continues beyond you? What would that look like for you?
I'm actually doing everything I can right now with a beautiful and have a great board and so many people that are like underneath SOAR now. My dream is to have this work perpetuated. Um, we live in a really conflicted world, don't we? No matter what side of the conversation you're on, it's a conflicted world. And I truly, truly believe that our way out, that our way to the other side of this is through our children and through them not only having the tools to navigate their own lives, but to be leaders and to be able to have the courage to stand up and use their voices and step into their power. And legacy for me looks like, and I do get emotional, is that happens, is that they continue to create a world where people, whether they're children or adults, feel heard, feel seen.
Feel like they do have a voice, that they can speak up, because I think so much of that is squashed. There was a time, I know, growing up, you're to be seen and not, seen and not heard, I think it was. And so my mom and dad always joked about it. My kids are angels when we're out in public, but boy, when they come home, they rip the roof off the place. But it was, you were to be seen and heard, seen, not heard in public.
Yeah.
So we're shifting that. We're finally getting around to it. It's only been 50 some years. But I see where you're going with that. And I think Oprah Winfrey said it best when she said that people need to be seen and heard and know what they say matters. And we talk about that in adult personal growth programs all the time. But do we do that for kids? Do we have that same thought process, those same rules for kids? Do we get down on our knees when they're smaller than us and look eye to eye with them and actually have a conversation with them? I do, because I have 13 great
Yeah.
nieces and nephews, 14 now, great nieces and nephews. And so, yeah, I do that. But I didn't know that that's not something you did do, because I never had my own kids. So I might have done things differently because I only treat them like adults, because that's people I work with as adults. But the fact that you're creating that space for kids, it should bring tears to people's eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I think that that's how I know that um, this never gets old. Um, I never get jaded because each weekend is so profound and so new, and every child is so different, and what they bring to the table is so different. And it also just continues to emphasize how much work we still have left to do.
Yeah.
And so it's impossible to get jaded in that environment. It's impossible to take it for granted. Um, and I'm constantly amazed at the wisdom, that these children have and how observant they are. And because people don't talk to them, like you said, because they don't ask their opinion, because they don't have safe space to be able to voice what's going on inside of them, a lot of times people have absolutely no idea, first of all, how observant they are, what they're actually seeing and hearing, but second, just how wise they are, and I learn more in every weekend I get to spend with these students than I teach them. I learn more than I teach. Um, and at 70, almost 73 now, I think that that says something about what's possible in this world. That so much is possible if these kids are given the opportunity to grow and blossom and step into who they're actually destined to be. Yeah.
Well, thank you for following your dreams. And this is a show for entrepreneurs. I'm talking to women who the whole goal here is to encourage women to go find their own income, live their passion, get out of their shell if they haven't already done that. Um, is there one piece of advice, a piece of wisdom that you might offer an entrepreneur or a woman watching this show who hasn't started chasing her dreams? Like, you're on the other side of this. You are in the midst of and creating the reality of what you've been dreaming about, what has been on your heart. You called it your life's mission. Like, everything you've done this is a culmination of what you believe that you were here to do. What's one piece of wisdom that you could offer somebody who's on the fence, maybe not hasn't taken the plunge? A word of encouragement for the people listening.
Be courageous. Be courageous. When you are doing something you love, something you truly, authentically believe makes a difference in whatever field that is, be courageous, because the only person that can really stop you from achieving that is yourself. You getting in your own way. Um, I know that we make up all kinds of stories in our brains about why we can't, why we shouldn't, who's going to stop us, or what's going to stop us. But those are stories that we make up. Why not make up a story that empowers us? Why not make up a story that allows us to have the life we want? And so my advice would be courageous, follow your heart. And,
Beautiful. Well
and
said. Don't take my word for it. We have an expert in the room, you guys. If you're listening to this, I want you to make sure you heard it. She said courageous, and I'm going to just pile on and say brave. My word. I used to wear a bracelet that said "Be brave, be brave," and unfortunately, it broke. But I think I got to that point. I had to wear it for a really long time to be brave. Keep going. You can do this. Be brave. Now I wear one that says inspire. My ring says inspire. I look at it every time, and it's every day. It's facing me. I never take it off. I sleep in it, wear it in the water, everything. Because that's my life's mission, is to actually inspire women to step into their greatness, step into their power, use their voices, be heard, have an impact, create your own money, create financial impact, because your kids are watching, and what you do matters to them, and who they grow up to be is because of who they're watching, and that's you. So step out and be brave. Thank you so much for your time today, Debbie.
my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Yes, it's been an honor. And again, as I mentioned, she is funding this by grants. So if there is, an extra couple bucks in your book, in your checking account, and you'd like to find her and connect, you can find all of her contact information in the show notes. Is there one place in particular you'd like folks to reach out to you at?
Um, sure. I mean, my email is going to be there, and but our website is so comprehensive and it really tells a story about SOAR and also gives opportunity to donate. And so,
And what is your website? What's the address? Because some people are just listening and maybe not seeing
yes.
us and they
So
won't see it on the
it's
screen.
www.soarwithconfidence.com.
SOARwithconfidence.com.
SOAR.
SOAR, soarwithconfidence.com. All right, you guys, I hope that this inspired you to follow your dreams, whether it's your dream to own a business or dream to start a movement, create a mission, have an impact, make a difference in the world. If I can be of a resource for you to help you with social media, expand that online, that's what I do best. Feel free to reach out to me. I really do encourage women to find that residual income, grow your own income. And if I can support you in that in any way, go over to lisamosby.com, book 30 minutes with me, and the whole time it's all about you, whether it's about your business, your finances, what opportunity you want to step into. I'm here to be a source of encouragement for you. So please reach out and come back next week because we're going to have great guests all month long. And I do want to wish Debbie a happy 73rd birthday. Thank you so much for joining Birthday Eve with me, and see y'all next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lisa.